Hey, I'm Rob Blair, and I have a special guest with me today. His name is Paul Werder with LionHeart Consulting. How's it going, Paul?
It's going great, Rob. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate our conversations over the last couple of years, and I'm looking forward to this one too.
Over the years, we have built a relationship, and I value our relationship. I consider us
Yeah.
friends, and I wanted to put something out today that kind of shine the light on really what you do and how it's impacted my life, how it's helped me professionally and personally. So
Sure.
I guess explain real quick, just really, what is Lionheart Consulting? What do you do?
Well, the what I do is leadership development and the culture improvement stuff. That's what I focus on. But why I do it is even more important. I think I love to help people learn how to lead from their hearts and not their egos. I learned that very early on in my career the hard way, knocked out of the game with a stress-induced illness in my late 20s. And I started a journey saying, how do you be successful and healthy, successful and happy? Because I was successful in my first job, but I sure wasn't very happy, nor was I healthy. And that learning how to connect to and lead from the heart is what I've been all about for almost 40 years now.
Yeah. Well, and I ask you that, and that's the networking version of who you are and what you do. But for me, Paul Lionheart, you personally changed my life. When we first had that conversation, how we started that conversation, how we started our relationship, and how you were able to be candid with me, brutally candid with me, to the point where I wanted more, right? And so I don't know if you remember that conversation, but the quick version of that is really, you and I are talking on the phone, and it was an hour-long kind of freebie. Let's fill each other out, see if it's going to be a good mix. And halfway through it, you stopped me cold and said, "Yeah, this is not going to work. I can't work with someone as egotistical as you." And after I picked my job off the ground, I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm pouring out my heart, trying to be, clear and candid with you, and all these things that happen." And you said, there's two sides to ego. One, there's the arrogant side, and one is the self-destructive side. And you, my friend, are egotistical, right?
And not arrogant at all. Beating yourself up to your own demise.
But you were 100% accurate, and the way you said it to me was heartfelt, right? And that's what I appreciate about you, because anyone else, it would have been probably combative. I would have started arguing. But the way you said it, I realized, like, you're not trying to hurt my feelings. You're just being brutally honest with me. And we were able to dive even deeper and realize that, there was a lot of things I had to work through personally and professionally to get to the point where I'm at now. And that's why I wanted you to say what you normally say as far as, when you're meeting with people. But here's the brutal, honest, candid who Paul is and what Lionheart is and what you mean to me. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Rob. And the principles underneath, that kind of a little bit outside the box approach is, I care about people. I want to help people. And I see the good people of the world often beating themselves up, often not owning their strengths, living up to who they are. But you got to be willing to, put yourself out there as a servant to the people who are needing your wisdom and your expertise. And you can only do that by caring about people, and caring about them means being straightforward when you have to be straightforward. So that's why we started our conversation the way we did. I listened for a half hour and I couldn't stand you beating yourself up.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I don't think I could stand myself beat myself up either, right?
That's right.
That's why we probably made that connection and why I was open to it. So,
right.
You'd mentioned servant leadership, right? And I work for Movement Mortgage, and Movement is an amazing example of servant leadership from the top down. So the other day, and I when we had our last conversation, I told you about a quote I heard from our CEO, Casey Crawford. So Casey had said, there's a difference between success and significance. Success ends with us personally. Significance actually starts when we focus on others. And I bring that up because there's a lot of things that we're missing if we're only focusing on ourselves. And LionHeart Consulting, Business with Heart, I mean, it's in the title of your company, Business with Heart. Can you explain a little bit about Business with Heart versus not? I mean, you're not a normal coach or consultant, right? I mean, you do things different.
I'm outside the box for sure. I'm not in mainstream business. If the business school people would look at my plan of how I do my thing, they would say it'll never work. Well, somehow it does. Somehow it did. One of the secrets of life is that, yes, there's all kinds of tragic stuff going on in our world, all over the place. There's a lot to be upset about. There's a lot to be bummed out about, and even angry about. But what happens is, we get wound up in all the external chaos in the world, and then we lose our connection to our heart. And our heart is what connects us to our source as well as to other human beings. And one of the secrets of life is that when I'm connected to my heart and I connect with you and your heart, we have something meaningful going on. We're trying to help each other, not just be successful in the outer arena with, your bill, paying your bills and, putting your money away and all that good stuff. But we're actually doing something that provides us with this feeling inside of making a difference. And all of us are hungry to make a difference, especially in the world that is starving for authenticity, for contribution, for service, for, giving people, another chance to discover how amazing they are. And if you're just focusing on your own success, you miss all that. And you don't have the fulfillment and the meaning and the purpose of what life is really all about. It's to help people. It's to contribute.
We're programmed as a society, I feel, to not necessarily show what we perceive as weakness, right? We can't be vulnerable, but there's a lot of strength and power when you actually are coming from that place, because pain is an amazing educator. And so if someone's gone through something that's painful, they know it from all angles, frontwards, backwards, they understand it. And if you can connect with someone at a level that they might be vulnerable by showing your vulnerability, it's a different type of relationship. It's a different connection. And I think that's really kind of the key here, because I've been on 3 calls in the last 2 weeks with realtor groups and sales meetings where they're really struggling with the emotion of buyers missing out on opportunities, on homes. And that's a real frustration. That's a real deal right now. Inventory's super low. And so if you go through it as focusing on just the transaction and you're not making a different type of connection, you're not going to win. And that's what I love about that quote, and what I love about what you've taught me is to have conversations with people that are at a different level.
And in our normal business society and in society in general, we've all been taught, directly and indirectly, to put our mask on, to put our game face on, to act like you've got it all together. Never let them see you sweat. Right. And that doesn't go very far in terms of connecting with people. The authenticity and the vulnerability that is our own humanity lets us become comfortable in our own skins as who we are.
So the next thing I wanted to kind of bring up was something that you said that stuck with me, because I called you up and I had some frustrations, right? And it's me investing in my time and energy into people and then not necessarily seeing the value. Right, and that's been something that I've struggled with for a long time. It's, I would take that personally. And what you told me was helping people without expectations. Again, that was kind of a slap across the face, like, wake up, Rob. It's not about you. It's the significance of it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And if I operate with that mindset and knowing that I'm trying to help anyone and everyone, and if they go with me, great. If they don't, I still need to be happy in their successes, knowing that I still help them, whether it was income coming from it, whether it was numbers coming from it, or whatever. I have to have that separation, otherwise I'll drive myself crazy.
Right. Well, it's the difference between being driven to get every single deal and push, as if that deal is the only one that I have, The other option is to say, oh, I'm going to put myself out there in a caring, considerate, thoughtful, professional way to as many people as I'm, introduced to, and as many people as I can, find. And I'm going to trust that somehow the ones that are supposed to work with me are going to say yes. And that's that part of my, kind of business acumen that that is outside the box, unorthodox. I just decide, okay, I know that people are gonna, love my work if I, care about them and help them love their work. And enough of those people, send somebody my way. Not all of them are gonna say yes. Not all of them are gonna be ready for this kind of a journey. It is outside the box. It does take a different level of authenticity and vulnerability to become your real self and live and work from your heart, lead from your heart. Not everybody's up for it at this point in time, and maybe they will be someday, maybe not. But my job is just to put it out there and trust that somehow it all comes back to me in a way that's enough.
It's literally putting it out there to where you're having an impact on people that you may not even know you're having an impact on. And so our friend Ryan, he told me of a term that I think it's a great example of really what he does and what Casey does at Movement, and what I'm trying to do and what you do is called the lighthouse effect. And it's, if you just think of a lighthouse at night, storm, and that light's going around and around and around, you have no idea how many lives you're saving or touching, but you are, right? And so there's people that are taking what you are putting out and using it and valuing it, and you may not even know it. And that's a frequency that is a level of significance that I'm striving to reach. And I know we're all trying to get better, right? But there's certain people in this world that are kind of at that point right now. They don't even know they're at the lighthouse effect, right? I mean, it's an amazing analogy that I love, but I think exactly in line with what we're talking about here and what LionHeart does.
Absolutely, and that reminds me of my favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life, and my business hero is George Bailey. And at the end of the halfway through the movie or so, he's very depressed. He doesn't think his life is worth continuing. He tries to commit suicide, and the angel saves him. And at the end of the show, at the end of the movie, they show him what his life would have been like if he hadn't been born, what the world would be like if he hadn't been born and he hadn't done the things that he'd done. And it was this amazing, invisible impact that was invisible to him, but a huge impact on the world that he wasn't conscious to. So that's the principle. Put yourself out there in the best way possible, and you'll have no idea of how many people's lives have been improved and helped because of the people you help, and then they help somebody else, and so on and so forth. So it's an exponential impact, as it turns out.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. The idea of putting yourself out there and helping people that are in emotional distress, right? And I'm going to go back to the real estate analogy, just because that's my world right now. There's a lot of people that are frustrated, that are sad, that are, they might have written 20 offers, and the last one was the home they absolutely fell in love with, and it's devastating. And we can, as professionals trying to help them get into homes, we can do everything we possibly can to try to educate them and coach them and bring them along. But you had mentioned something the other day as well, that you can't necessarily deal with emotion by using logic. Can you expand on that and maybe dig a little bit deeper for us? So
when somebody says, I'm feeling really depressed or upset or bad, and when your response is some version of, oh, well, don't worry about it, something good will come along. It's like, I don't really connect to you at the emotional level. I'm trying to talk you out of the emotions you have, and that never works. You have to respond, heart to heart. I hear the pain. I have some compassion. I have some empathy with you. So as I connect with you heart to heart, when you come, with some of your upsets or troubles, then we can start to feel that connection, again, and that connection allows us to potentially get into what you would call a coaching conversation, or well, can I ask you a few questions about what we ought to do now? So I'm kind of helping you kind of go from your emotional state to a positive outcome, to a positive intention that you kind of come up with on your own, because all I've done is ask you a series of questions that leads you to the discovery that you're going to be okay if you can go forward and do the things that we just talked about. And they didn't come from me for the most part. They came from inside of you. And that's the magic of coaching. And you can only coach somebody if you have that heart-to-heart connection and they're willing, to explore their possibilities while they're under duress.
Yeah, and that is so misunderstood in today's world, because it's based on numbers and transactions, and we get into this frenzy of just trying to be able to show people homes, and this one came on the market. There has to be something that at least you can connect with people on the emotional side, because as professionals, it's not our family that is involved. It's not our money that's involved. And I think that's forgotten way too many times in this fast-paced market. And there's a lot of stuff that's going to be missed if we're not connecting, at least on the emotional level, or being able to have those heart-to-heart conversations. It sounds kind of corny, sounds kind of cliche, but this has way better conversations, builds trust faster than what this is going to do, because this cloud's really what this is. And so having those conversations, I've had some very difficult conversations, both professionally and personally in my life, and it comes across completely fine and taken completely fine when it's coming from here. People know when you're talking with your mind versus your heart, because there's vulnerability and you expose that and they sense it. It's a subconscious thing, I don't know what it is, but that's why I value what you do and what you've taught me in my personal and business world. So
yeah, and all that's based on the principle that I understand and know when I'm at my best, that you have what you can do at your best. You are an amazing person. You can kind of solve your own problems. You are capable. You have your own unique talents and gifts. And all I just try to do is connect with you at that heart-to-heart emotional level, so that I can help you remember who you are at your best when you've forgotten.
right.
And that's what a good coach does, but that's what a good realtor does. That's what a good loan officer does when their customers are having troubles and issues. They learn how to listen and ask the right questions to help people walk themselves through their difficulty in the best way they can. And that's, again, very different than giving advice and giving answers and solutions to people that may or may not be good. Sometimes they're spot on, but oftentimes they miss the mark. Solution for me isn't the same solution for you.
And that goes back to logic isn't always going to be the answer to emotion.
That's right.
What I'd like to get out of this, and really just to kind of get back to what we do and why we're having this conversation, is this something that you would be open to helping maybe larger groups, sales meetings, have conversations on ways, and maybe having people contact you, personally, like one-on-one for coaching or consulting?
Well, absolutely, with the caveat that, we have to be a great match. I will challenge, I will see, if somebody calls me and says, I'd like to work with you, we talk, and I tell them who I am and what I'm about, and I try to care about them in a way that is like I cared about you, which is truthful and honest, and saying, here's what I think you're talking about, here's what I think you need. And if you're willing to do the work on your side, we could have a great working relationship together.
They can make it past 30 minutes. It's on, right? I think I made it like 20 minutes, maybe 30, I don't know. But again, I consider you a friend. I value
as well
everything that you've done for me in my life, professionally, personally. My wife thanks you. There's just a lot of benefits from having our relationship and having met you. So I thank you, and thank you for coming on here and talking and telling people what you do, and some different ways to maybe approach some struggles that we're all probably dealing with.
The truth, Rob, is that it doesn't have to be this hard. Life doesn't have to be this hard. If we put service, connection to our own hearts, connection to other people's hearts as our first priority, as opposed to something, well, I'd like to think about doing that someday, but first I've got to make a lot of money. We've got to put priorities, our own well-being, our own care for ourselves and who we are as our highest priority, and then the rest of it becomes easier.